Alex, time to go. Right, do you have a snack, Iris?
For Jamie Andrew, the first challenge of the day is getting his kids to school.
Having kids has been the biggest change that's happened in my life. That's in many ways far more significant than having lost my hands and feet. They don't cut me any slack just because I'm disabled. They don't see me as this guy without hands and feet. They just see me as dad.
To live an everyday life with his wife and 3 kids, Jamie has come up with ingenious ways of getting round his disability.
That's a spare driving arm for driving the car. Got a bit of a spare foot. That's an old foot. That's a snowball thrower for throwing snowballs. It's quite good, this. Attach it onto one of my arms. You scoop up the snow with the white bit and you compact it into a ball like that, and then you chuck it. I'm a very ordinary person, obviously in quite unusual circumstances, but I've always loved the thrill of taking on a challenge. Things were entirely achievable, you know, with the right positive attitude. You know, you're filming this because you think that's interesting, but to me that's not an achievement of any sort. That's just making a cup of tea like anyone else does. Since the accident, I've gradually done more and more difficult things. I've got this body. I'm going to find new ways of doing stuff with it.
Since he lost his hands and feet, Jamie has been planning a challenge that will push his body to the limit. To reach the top of the Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps. A 1,400-meter climb of sheer rock and ice. It's claimed over 500 lives, and every year over 1,200 are plucked from the mountain in rescue missions.
It's the classic mountain peak, you know, it's this huge wedge of rock and snow and ice that just rises up above everything around it. For years I've imagined that would be way beyond what I could possibly achieve without hands and feet. But to me, I've always thought to fail to make the most of life is a much bigger risk.
If Jamie can climb the Matterhorn, he'll be the first person with this disability to reach the top. Jamie has 3 months before he attempts the Matterhorn. He has a rigorous training regime.
The Matterhorn, all of it is technical rock climbing.
Balancing on prosthetic legs has to be second nature.
Obviously I can't feel my feet. I have to be careful that every footstep I make is very precise.
Climbing without hands means using his arm stumps to grip.
I could attach hooks or, you know, any kind of prosthetic arms, but I find that the best way is just to use my bare arms and climb as best I can. Click. Yeah, beauty.
Jamie comes here every week to build up his body strength and stamina.
I'm just going to have to go away and do a whole lot more training. I'm never going to do this in one push. This is the reason why I can't climb 2 days in a row, and it just gets really raw with gripping on. Still, if it was too easy, it wouldn't be any fun.
Jamie's determination to climb the Matterhorn means leaving his family behind.
There you go, Felix. Hey. Hey.
They want him to return safe and sound. It's a concern he carries with him every day.
Good.
Anna, my wife, has always known me as a mountain climber. That's what makes me the person that I am, and you know, she accepts that. But that doesn't mean that it's always easy. You know, she does worry, and we will have to be very aware of the hazards. But I'm hoping we can do it in a safe manner, because that for me is foremost nowadays. You know, having a family, I don't want to take the huge risks that I did take when I was a younger climber.
Jamie, more than anyone, is aware of the risks of climbing. 14 years ago, on a climb with his best friend Jamie Fisher, he paid the ultimate price.
We were faced with a decision. Should we turn back, go back down, or should we carry on?
"14 years ago, Jamie Andrew was in the Alps climbing a mountain called Les Droites. He was with his best friend and climbing partner, Jamie Fisher.
He was an incredibly vivacious, fun-loving, mischievous, and happy guy. He was a great climber. He would just push and push really hard, push himself to his limit. We had great weather, great forecast, great looking climbing conditions. And it was only as we approached the summit on day 2 of our climb that things started to go wrong. The weather changed really quickly. The clouds rolled in, visibility soon dropped down to near zero. We were engulfed in a huge storm, which surprised us completely. And at that point, we were faced with a decision. Should we turn back, go back down, or should we carry on?
They made a fateful decision and pushed on to the top.
Now, there was no shelter. There was nowhere to get any protection from the elements, from the wind and the snow. And there we remained trapped by the storm for an ordeal that was to last for 5 days. It snowed more or less constantly. We were constantly being buried. With a 1,000-meter drop down one side that we just climbed, and a 500-meter drop down the other side, down the south face. It really was that precarious. It was literally on the crest of the mountain. We knew that time was running out. We couldn't survive up there for very much longer at all.
On the 4th day, a break in the weather and a ray of hope.
We thought that was it. We were out of there.
This footage is filmed from a rescue helicopter. A rescuer was dangled on a cable, but high winds made the situation too desperate.
They got him to within about 5 meters of where we were, but you could see it was so precarious, you know. The clouds were closing in again, and by then dusk was falling as well. And so at one point the helicopter just disappeared off into the gloom. We would have walked away if that first rescue attempt had been successful. Jamie and I realised that we were condemned to yet another desperate night on the mountain. Temperatures of minus 30 degrees C, wind speeds of 130 kilometres an hour. So conditions that the human body really just can't survive. I remember at one point just realising that my fingers had suddenly frozen, you know. And by frozen, I mean literally frozen solid. And Jamie Fisher, sometime during this period, started succumbing to hypothermia. Eventually became unconscious, and then ultimately just stopped moving altogether. And I knew at that point that this was it, this was the end. And I just closed my eyes in what was a certain knowledge that I was never going to wake up from that sleep ever again. But sometime later, I did open my eyes again, and I was still there. And the amazing thing was that when I opened my eyes and looked out, the first thing that I saw was the first rays of sunshine. And it was the most incredible dawn, you know, all the mountain peaks all around me were just catching fire. It seemed like just moments later, out of nowhere, the helicopter appeared.
The rescue team returned, still fighting high winds. This time, they were able to winch Jamie into the helicopter.
I knew then that I'd made it, but I knew also that this was no happy ending. I was returning to a very, very different world.
Jamie was alive, but his body had suffered terribly.
And I was surrounded by doctors and nurses, and it was all happening crazy around me. All four of my limbs were literally frozen to the bone. Now, frostbite is very, very damaging to body tissue, you know. It destroys the cells. But gradually it became more and more obvious that there was very little that could be done.
Jamie's limbs were thawing out, but they were starting to poison the rest of his body. It was life-threatening. He fell into a coma. The doctors had to operate.
I woke up from those operations and I looked down, and well, it took me a while to figure out what had happened. I just kind of felt that somehow someone was going to make it better. They were going to come and say, no, it's okay, we just took them away, we'll put them back on, it's all going to be fine. But gradually I realized it wasn't all going to be fine, and this was real. And that I was facing the rest of my life without hands and feet. And that just seemed too appalling to even contemplate. There was many times I felt that I would have been better off dying up there on the mountain alongside my friend, Jamie. There was a lot of very difficult emotions relating to Jamie that troubled me. The anger at myself, and anger at Jamie for not having survived. And there was guilt at having survived when he hadn't. But in the end, it was through thinking about Jamie that I came to realize that really I was the lucky one. I was, you know, the most important thing was that I was alive. I have the responsibility to treat it like my next big challenge, and just to treat it like the next big mountain that I have to climb. And when I'd flipped that switch and decided to see this as a positive thing, suddenly the world started opening up again, and everything became a possibility. I've got this, essentially this new body. I'm going to find new ways of doing stuff with it. Within 3 months of the accident, I had my first prosthetic legs. But shortly after that, I ditched the frame and walked unaided. And that felt just amazing. That was just, for me, one of the most amazing moments.
By his side throughout his ordeal was his girlfriend, Anna. At the end of a long year, they were back at home, and Jamie proposed. Just before their wedding, Jamie and Anna went back to the Alps.
Although I didn't go and climb any mountains, we did go out on the slopes and went snowboarding. Really, sometimes it was just about going out and giving something a go and finding out what was possible without hands and feet.
Over the next few years, Jamie set himself new goals. Each challenge more difficult than the last.
I realized then that I was becoming addicted to this idea of taking on new challenges and achieving new things, and I just wanted to keep going with that and keep pushing my boundaries of what was possible without hands and feet.
Jamie's new challenge is to conquer the Matterhorn. It's just 6 weeks away. It's such a difficult mountain, he won't be climbing it alone. He's come to Switzerland to train with his friend and climbing partner, Roger Payne.
Need a plaster?
No, it's a tiny little skin tag.
Man up. We've got to graze. Cancel the project.
Roger and Jamie have been planning this project for years.
Well, we can't be overconfident when we think about the Matterhorn, because it's a big mountain, a serious mountain. It's a hazardous environment. It's an unforgiving environment. So when things go wrong, they can go wrong with terrible consequences. Lots of people want to climb it. Lots of people fail, and unfortunately some people get injured and some people don't come back.
Okay, and that's me ready.
Over the next 3 days in the Alps, Jamie and Roger will work on their rock climbing skills.
Okay, I'm feeling a bit precarious here.
This is their final practice session before they take on the Matterhorn.
Roger's a mountain guide, and that makes a big difference for me to have somebody who's not just a really good climber, but is actually very experienced about leading less capable people in the mountains.
Over the years, Roger has learned when and how to help Jamie on the rock face. They're always connected by a safety rope.
Okay? Yep.
We climbed together a lot over the years, and he was always very enthusiastic, super enthusiastic, in fact.
Okay, Jamie, you can take me off.
Okay. We're basically going to be moving together. So Roger leading ahead, me scrambling on behind, and hopefully if I have a wobbly moment or slip, Roger can just protect that. Really nice and precise climbing with these feet.
Yeah. We've been able to perfect our technique with the equipment.
It's lovely smelling plants up here. We'll take some for our dinner.
You have to have self-belief, and I think we've got plenty of belief that if we get the right weather and conditions, then we stand as good a chance as anybody else.
Okay, fantastic. Right, well, we seem to have survived that. A little bit of a mountaineering adventure.
His final training session with Roger is done. Jamie can leave the Alps tomorrow confident that they're ready for the Matterhorn.
It's nice at the end of a long, hard day just to be able to take your legs off.
Very good.
Right, thanks for that.
Yeah. What do you think, Jamie? Is it time for a beer?
Yeah, I don't think that could be too bad a plan.
But like so many things in life, you can't predict everything, and that sometimes things just go wrong. Sometimes fate just deals you a blow that you can't predict.
Well, now, at least 3 British climbers have been killed in an avalanche in the French Alps. They are among 9 people.
On the 12th of July 2012, there was an avalanche on Mont Blanc, the worst in over a decade. It caused a shockwave amongst climbers around the world. The first Jamie heard was in a phone call from a journalist.
And she said, "Oh, haven't you heard? Roger Payne was killed in an avalanche yesterday morning on Mont Blanc." And it turned out that Roger had been on essentially a routine trip with 2 clients when a large chunk of ice had detached from the mountain above where they were climbing. And Roger never had a chance. And at first I just couldn't take it in. I couldn't believe that this could possibly have happened, that I'd always believed somehow that Roger was indestructible. And it was just such a stark reminder that, you know, it's a dangerous game. And obviously it meant the end of the Matterhorn attempt for that year, but that seemed trivial in comparison. You know, that was not my concern at all. I wasn't even thinking about going climbing again for quite a period.
Jamie Andrew has spent almost a year reflecting on his dream of climbing the Matterhorn. It was put on hold after the death of his close friend and climbing partner, Roger Payne.
As the months go by, you gradually come to terms with what has happened, and you start to think once again about climbing in the mountains. But whether I wanted to take on the Matterhorn or not was something that took a while to crystallize in my mind. But again, I knew that it was a project that Roger had really believed in. And I felt really that if I felt in my heart I wanted to do it, then Roger would be 100% behind that.
Jamie has decided the project is back on. He's come to Switzerland to take on the Matterhorn in just a few days' time. But first, he has to forge a working relationship with his new climbing partner, Steve Jones.
Hi, Steve.
Steve was also a friend of Roger's. They've met before, but haven't climbed together.
Oh, welcome to Lausanne again.
Thank you.
Great.
I knew that he was absolutely solid, really solid climber. And although a very different character from Roger, he shared just the same enthusiasm. But interestingly, we never actually climbed together as a pair.
Steve wants to learn how Jamie will cope on such a dangerous mountain. They don't have much time.
I need a helmet.
Check.
Harness.
Check. So the first thing is to make our plans, look at the maps, pack our gear, to look at all the special bits and pieces that I have, my walking poles, my legs. Steve needs to understand how they work so that if there's a problem, he can help me out.
That just clips around my ankle there, tight as you like, and you can crank these as tight as you like because it's not going to hurt too much. These are my hands, basically.
Yeah.
So if I
damage them.
If I damage them, then that's quite a serious handicap.
It was just a question of how long was it going to take me to do this? Because normally most climbers do the Matterhorn up and down in a day. And that, for me, was always going to be a hell of a lot to take on.
To practice, Steve and Jamie will climb together on different types of terrain.
It's funny, you don't realise how every step you take is a decision about where that foot's going to land and what's going to happen.
Steve needs to be confident they can climb together safely.
What I'm going to do here, Jamie, is just tie you on here and keep you on a short rope, just in case you trip over or slip or anything, then you're not going to disappear down a
It's looking a bit steeper.
hole. Yeah, it gets a bit steeper now. And
a few crevasses.
There's a few crevasses around. That's a pretty deep one there. Look. Hold on. Oh. There's a little balancing act here.
Yep.
Steve moves off the ice and onto a mountain ridge.
But just tell me if you're going to jump off one side, because I'm going to jump the other side.
Oh, well, I wasn't planning on jumping off either side just now, but I'll let you know if I change my mind.
Giving Steve a chance to see how quickly Jamie climbs on the rock face.
Okay. Yeah, come on.
Okay.
Good, well done. That's great. Here we are, Jamie. Here's the first view of the Matterhorn, and in fact we see the whole of the Herney Ridge in profile.
Yet.
Can you not?
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Fantastic. It's just such an amazing peak. And here we are, looking at it.
Steve's final test for Jamie is the most crucial. The descent. 80% of climbing accidents happen on the way down. This is when Jamie struggles the most.
Okay, slowly, 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 because there's a drop. Slowly.
Yeah.
It takes Jamie almost twice as long to go down as it does to go up. Although the training session has gone well, Steve is worried that Jamie's disability will slow them down too much.
You've got to remember that once you're at the top, it's going to take you exactly the same amount of time to get back down again. And I think in our case, it's going to take, we need to factor in even more time.
Steve is fairly convinced that I'm not going fast enough. I'm fairly convinced that I can go a little bit faster.
We have to work out a bit of a timetable and say, well, at this point, if we're not going to get there, we're going to have to turn around.
If we can't get to the top smartly, then we shouldn't be going to the top at all. So
That's correct, yeah.
I think
That's exactly my thinking.
We decided that if we're going to go for it, we may as well go with the intention of heading for the summit. You know, there's no harm in trying.
The weather forecast gives Jamie just one clear day to reach the summit. If he wants to conquer the Matterhorn safely, he'll need to be up and down on the same day. To make this possible, they will start climbing at 5 o'clock in the morning. Their first target is to reach a refuge shelter called the Solvay Hut before 9 o'clock. This should give them enough time to climb to the summit and back down again.
That becomes a major focus in my mind. We need to get to the Solvay by 9 o'clock. Any later than 9 o'clock, we've got to think seriously about whether we're making the progress that we need to.
If Jamie can't get to the Solvay Hut by 9, he'll have to turn back. His dream will be over. It's been a 3-hour trek to reach the starting point, a hotel for climbers. Tomorrow, Jamie attempts the climb of his life.
I look at the photographs on the wall, the amazing amount of history that this mountain holds, the triumphs, the tragedies, the extremes of human emotion. I'm starting to feel very tense, very nervous now. But I know that I have to do what I can to get some rest before the big day.
Okay, Jamie, well, let's give it a go. See how we get on.
great.
Okay.
How are you feeling there, Jamie?
Too early in the morning for emotions, I think. I'm just feeling completely numb. Oh man. A cold start.
Yeah.
This is the very start of the route. This piece of rock here. As you can see, it starts with quite a steep wall. It's got a fixed rope on it.
Okay, Jamie.
Climbing.
Jamie is on the Swiss side of the Matterhorn. It's a precarious ridge all the way to the top. A tiny slip could be fatal.
This really is a rude awakening.
It's really, from now on, it's really climbing all the way.
I just feel awful. The ground is awkward, every step is difficult. I just feel completely overwhelmed and I'm not at all sure that I want to do this at all.
Right, I'll just stand there while you're on that ledge. I'll just try not to stand on your arms.
And I keep thinking, I'm just going to shout to Steve, let's just give this up, let's just go back down straight away. It's completely silent on the mountain, giving it a very eerie feel. The only noise is the sound of our equipment clattering off the rocks.
In the first 90 minutes, Jamie has climbed only half as far as planned. It doesn't look good for the 9 o'clock cutoff at the Solvay hut.
I just don't think I'm moving fast enough to get this all done. I just, you know, we're going at such a slow pace, and I know that I can't go any faster than this. Not safely. So,
at this moment, the sun finally crests the mountains beyond.
Yeah, look at that sun on the top. It's fantastic, isn't it?
And it's just a beautiful moment. And we take the opportunity to have our first short rest, get a drink of water, just catch our breath a little bit. I'm really happy, I'm really joyful to be here.
fizzy water, that's posh.
Yeah.
Those hours of doubt of climbing in the dark are past now. It's a real privilege to be on the mountain in such a perfect day. And I feel like I'm in my zone.
With the sun on his back, Jamie is climbing with confidence. He's 200 meters from the Solvay hut, but he only has 40 minutes to beat the cutoff time.
I've got so much still ahead of me. All the while I'm aware that time is pressing on and that really we should be at the hut or past it by now.
Whew. I never seem to get any closer, that hut. Whew. Jesus, look at that.
This is... Come in now, Jamie.
I know that when we sit down in the Solvay to have our break, that is the moment where we're going to have to make a difficult decision.
Right, I think it's really important to have a little bit to eat and drink here. I'm a bit over my cut-off time at the moment, so I'm...
What's the time now?
It's 9:20.
We're a bit behind time. There's no getting away from the fact. And it's not a great deal. It's only 20 minutes or so behind the 9 o'clock cut-off time that we'd agreed. But there is a reason why a cut-off time is called a cut-off time.
Jamie's dream is to reach the summit. He's climbed just over 900 meters. The top of the Matterhorn is almost 500 meters further up. Steve is concerned.
I want a moment or two to think about it and discuss with you, actually, because it does depend on how you feel too. You know, it's you've got to remember that we need to have enough energy to get all the way back down again, and that is, as I say, it's going to take at least the same time, if not longer, in some parts.
Very aware of every step that I take is going to be one that I have to reverse. I know I can do all that.
It is a remarkable achievement just getting to this point here. So I do have to just think a little bit about the timings for getting back down safely.
But I'm not going to push you into...
We can't go any... Yeah, we can't go any faster, that's for sure. To go safely, we go at this speed.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to keep going at this speed. It'll be a right pain on the way down. But, and I've always expected that. So, you know, if you want to call it, I'd fully respect that. If you're keen to go on, I'd go.
If we're to stick to the original plan, we will go down. We will descend from this point.
Steve and Jamie have made a decision. They're making one last push to the top of the Matterhorn.
Okay, Jamie, well, if we stand a chance for going to the top, we're really going to have to move along a bit.
Yeah.
And, right, let's get going then. Yeah. Okay.
Jamie Andrew has been climbing for over 5 hours. He's scaled 1,100 meters, and he's just over 300 meters from the top of the Matterhorn. There's a new cut-off time. He must reach the top no later than 1 o'clock.
I wish I could somehow climb quicker, because I know now that this is the moment. You know, we're so high on the mountain that I've dreamed about climbing. This is my chance to get to that peak. But I just can't climb any quicker.
Bashed my knee. Just got a wee stone. Went down there and it was just starting to hurt. There we go. Okay, now tip out the leg and see how it's in there.
There we are.
That's good. And you move the leg down a bit. That's the problem fixed. Oh, when these ones get tired, I've got a spare set of legs for the descent.
Thanks very much. That's good.
Jamie is now just 260 meters from the summit. He's being slowed down by a change in conditions.
To have been climbing on rock for so long, to suddenly be on slippery, soft, slushy snow doesn't feel nice.
Okay, Jamie? Got a good grip on me?
I've got a good grip, yeah, if you don't go too fast.
Any slip could be disastrous.
Stop there a sec.
At midday, 1 hour before their new cut-off time, Jamie and Steve stop climbing. The last section to the summit will take Jamie much longer than an hour. He has to make a decision.
We always said time was going to be an issue. You know, we've got to make a sensible decision. I can't climb any quicker.
No, I don't think
And we couldn't have better conditions.
No.
So I guess we just decide whether we just stick to the plan and just go down. We should get down today. Or whether we all decide we'd rather push to the summit now.
There's no doubt we could carry on and get to the summit and probably get off the mountain safely, one way or another.
You know, it's really tough because we are really close.
I know that if we were to carry on from this point, we would be throwing out of the window all the safety considerations that we agreed on at the start.
14 years earlier, Jamie was in a similar situation. He decided to press on to the top. Now, as a family man, his priorities have changed.
If I was 18 years old, maybe I would just carry on. I don't care. I'll give it a go and see what happens. But it's not like that anymore. You know, I've made promises. I've made promises to Anna and my kids that I'll be back later on next week, you know, and I've got to do what's right. I've got to do what's safe.
Unless we ever, you know, completely change tack, which is also not such a good idea, we should go down. Okay, decision made?
Decision made.
All right.
It's very hard to let go of a dream or a goal to accept that moment where you realise that it's not going to happen.
What we've got to do now is really careful going down, you know, that is the...
Yeah.
Jamie begins the slow and painful descent. Over 1,200 meters of sheer rock face to get to the bottom before nightfall. Then he'll face a 3-hour trek to the nearest village. As he descends the final section of the Matterhorn, he knows that turning back was the right decision.
That was a hard day. So we've been going for 14.5 hours. Excellent, Steve.
Well, you can relax now.
Thank you.
Terra firma.
How about a, what do we call it, a berg?
Bergheil.
A bergheil, a good manly bergheil.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
You know, I can't deny that I'm not disappointed, because I am. I'm also really chuffed with what we did do. You know, pretty much climbing the Matterhorn. Really, climbing the mountain wasn't the hard bit. The hard bit was getting to the foot of the mountain, and that's just taken so much hard work and effort from everybody around me. You know, my friends and my family, my wife Anna and my kids. And so, from that point of view, I'm really proud of what we did yesterday. I'm really proud of that achievement. And most of all, I think that Roger would have been proud of that attempt. And you know, I really carried his memory in my thoughts with me as we climbed the mountain, because really he should have been there too, and I hope in some way that he was. You know, that's for me really pushing the boundaries of what's possible for a person like me with no hands and feet.
It's a great memory. It's one that I'll always treasure. But for now, I'm just really happy to have had that experience, to have made it down safely, and to be back home with my family. That's what's always going to be most important to me. It would have been great to reach the top, but at least having not made it to the summit, that dream can still live on.